Welcome to the Brothers Craft Time Sharing Hour, a podcast of creative sibling rivalry. I am your primary brother host for this episode. My name is Jeff, and I am joined, as always, by my eminently talented, younger, sweet baby brother, Dan. Daniel, say hello.
Hello.
Hey, there you are.
That sounded so cheerful. God, I really faked that.
It's really out of character. Yeah.
Okay.
Play acting through the whole episode. Dan, we have a little bit of housekeeping up front. We are at around 10 reviews, I think, for the podcast as of this recording. So I would just ask that right off the bat, if you have listened to more than 2 episodes, just hit pause, hop on over to iTunes, Google Play, wherever you get your podcast, wherever you're listening from. And if you're able to, just leave like a quick 5-star written review. Helps the podcast grow. So we know more people are listening than are writing reviews, and it is literally a free way to support the podcast and one of the most effective ways to support it. So there, my pleading is finished.
I would just add to that, I have exhausted every device I have. I have 9 devices. I have signed in iTunes with each one of them. I am out of reviews that I can write.
So we
got mom to write one, and we're out. So we're maxed out here.
That's it. We're really now we're going beyond the family. Yeah. Which was also the title of my wedding invitation. So who titles a wedding invitation? Yeah.
No, it's some pompous asshole. That's
no
who
titles a wedding invitation. The other thing is that we have a Goodreads account, and I mention this because I think some of what we're going to talk about today, spoiler alert, as we hinted in the last episode, I think today we're going to be talking largely around ceramics. And in preparation for that, we read a book that was actually, Dan, you described it as like the backbone of your MFA program, Theory of Craft by Howard Rosati. Don't worry, we won't be really getting into the weeds on that too much, but I bring it up because we do have a Goodreads account for the show, and I haven't written any reviews yet because that takes some time, but if you want to go through, we're sort of building out a bookshelf under our account. I think the handle is Sharing Hour, like everything else we do. And under the Sharing Hour account, you should be able to see, if you're interested, like books that we've read. Most we've mentioned on the show, a lot we haven't. But just as we go through, it sort of builds out a bookshelf. If you're interested in like getting better at drawing or learning more about color theory and painting, or even really getting into some of the more wackadoo theory stuff that you get in an MFA program, will be, as much as I can remember, we'll be including those books on that Goodreads bookshelf. So check it out. Yeah.
If you do want to get into the weeds, that's a great suggestion. Also, just side note, a weed, I believe, according to Howard Rosati, would be a decoration, a type of jewelry for the earth. Is that how everything has to fit into one of these categories that he lays out? So
right, as the earth creates sort of a bodily experience, right? The earth is the body, but earth is also shelter. So is the earth itself then craft, Dan?
I thought earth was container. It's a spherical container. Oh God, my mind just blew. There it went.
And Dan had an
spherical container. Spherical container. That's a thesis fodder right there, I believe.
Yeah.
So,
speaking of spherical containers, that leads us into our conversation around ceramics, and then obviously the most common form of ceramics that we see, which is pottery. And the reason that we're going to be talking about this today is that, and this falls also under housekeeping, is that we had yet another episode suggestion on Instagram, and we absolutely love that. Like, this is, we don't just want to be talking about stuff that we're interested in. So really grateful to have any sort of episode suggestions, and we do our best to respond to that. What was asked was that we would talk about the history of ceramics. but we don't just want to do like an audio Wikipedia article. So we had a conversation actually this morning. So the introduction, we usually pretend that we haven't already had like a frantic 2 to 3 hour phone call over what the hell are we going to record and talk about today. So let's pretend we didn't have that phone call.
And so this is the frantic portion.
This is the frantic portion.
What we're pretending?
Yeah, okay. Exactly. No, the non-frantic, where everything is under control and we had it all planned and programmed.
Yeah, so when I signed in under an assumed name and suggested that we talk about ceramics and in particular pottery for an episode, I thought that would sound I thought that would fit quite nicely, because it is, as you said, the most kind of the most ubiquitous form of craft, and it does this wonderful thing of skirting the line where it is sometimes highly functional, maybe mass-produced. At times, it is fine art or collectible. It kind of weaves in and out of so many different categories, and through that frantic discussion, we kind of landed on maybe we should talk about that word that is in the title of our podcast, which is craft.
Oh God! Oh God!
Yeah. Do you want to? You have you have powered through the tome that is Howard Rosati's theory of craft in like the last 6 hours. So why don't you go ahead and vomit some theory at the folks?
Oh yeah, that's thanks, Dan.
What's a good summary of the book, Jeff? Go.
I didn't even see the bus coming. Wow, that's fantastic. You will hear me frantically Googling summary Howard Rosati. Theory of craft. So real quick, we know that we have some listeners who don't consider themselves like artists, makers, craftspeople, whatever. And for some reason they listen because of our charming personalities or just because you enjoy a certain patois. And
thanks,
with that,
Mom.
And with that, I lost all of those listeners. So talking about like what is craft and what is craft versus art might be really, like I said before, a little too in the weeds, but it is, I mean, to us it's interesting, so we're gonna dive into that because it shapes a lot of the world around you. I think when you just take a moment wherever you're at, unless you are listening to this downloaded to your phone and you are in the middle of nowhere, like a national forest, right? Like that you had to get a permit to walk into, everything around you has been designed or shaped by the human hand. And so this conversation around what is an art object, what is craft, what is design, it affects everything that everyone does every day. It goes all the way back through human history. That is why it matters to me. I don't know, Dan, if you have some impassioned plea for the subject, or maybe we're overselling it. I don't know.
No, I mean, I just want to make sure that we're tying it back to the original question, which was, it'd be interesting if you guys investigated or did a piece about ceramics. And so we thought about like several different approaches for that maybe we could do kind of a historical thing. I don't know, maybe we choose a figure that rides the line right in between craft and fine art, like Volkus with his ceramics.
Yeah, I guess we're missing like what ceramics has to do with craft versus art. And I think and you might push back against this, Dan, but for me, when I think of ceramics, which for those who are way outside of this and are just listening for fun, ceramics is clay, and especially fired clay. So clay, more than any other medium, I think each of us have probably 5 or half a dozen points that we want to make about like what makes ceramics and clay unique as a thing that people make stuff and shape the world with, and how very much like dogs, it's been there from the beginning, like dogs and fired mud. That is human history, right?
I'm calling episode title
dogs and fired mud. Yeah. But ceramics as a medium is like right there on the line between it is quote unquote merely craft, right? Like I'm in my basement, I'm throwing pots or bowls or plates or whatever, and I sell them at craft fairs. Don't mean that to sound diminutive. I'm playing on a stereotype there. Um, and then you have artists who revel in ceramics, and it's strictly fine art. There's no it's meant to be a symbol and a sign. It's not a functional object. It's not a thing that you take home and eat out of, or anything like that. It's a wall hanger. It goes on a pedestal. It's supposed to provoke conversation and affect culture.
Right.
And ceramics is that medium for me.
It sort of jumps so many of those categories. You started talking about these categories of things that objects fall into around us, and a lot of that is where we get the useful text from Howard Rosati, where we talk about categories of function and purpose and all these things, and that those are derived through creative practice in terms of art and design and craft. And if we were to throw a definition to each one of those, it would probably be that craft is thinking through and responding to material. This is not exclusive, which is some of the problems of Howard Rosati's book. But craft is thinking through material. Design, you could probably speak to that better than me, but I'd say maybe it's about messaging. It's about having a clear voice that is coming through, and fine art tends to be a bit more about maybe a philosophical musing sort of thing. It may not have an end point, but it's something that you think about. And so when you talked about people being in kind of the middle of nowhere, I think it's interesting that from the earliest kind of positions there in nature, you can see that ceramics or clay kind of jumps all these categories. It dives in and out. So you touch mud, it takes an impression. It's highly plastic, receptive to creativity, like you're talking about. Through a little bit of technology and effort, it can become a highly durable thing, which allows it to be used for dishware. So when it's fired and made into ceramics as opposed to just clay, it becomes a functional thing. It is receptive to molding, so it can be mass produced. And of course, along the way in planning what sort of bowl or object you're going to make, it can be it can have heavy elements of design incorporated into it. You can see that now there's actually 3D printers printing ceramic filament that's entirely design based. There's very little hand contact with this. And then there's, of course, when it's collected, when these ceramics become precious and valuable in some way, they're put on a shelf. And so they yet again jump a category and become an object of observation stripped of their utility. And so what was just a question on Instagram about us maybe investigating ceramics, what we're kind of laying out for you is the idea that that ceramics, while typically bowls, occupies a whole range of categories, and a discussion that you and I started having earlier this week about different materials, how do we want to approach them, the philosophical underpinning, and also just kind of personally what we want to explore the way that we always have, going out and working with materials.
Yeah, it's pretty funny. Like, I wonder if it's sort of a backlash against so much of what happens in art school, art education, where just think about it a little more. Okay, that was good, but think about it a little more. Like don't just follow your first idea. So when you get what seems like a very simple prompt or request, like just do the history of ceramics, and we instinctively
just the history of ceramics.
We spiral in like 3 different directions. Like, well, it's too obvious. Like we don't just want to be like an encyclopedia article. Yeah.
Let's just tackle the philosophy. We'll just do all of the philosophy. No. Let's just do the entire history of ceramics. We'll just do that.
Just pare it down. This led us to a conversation around material, like you said, and so today we'll talk about ceramics and sort of give a love letter to it, and like I said, like sort of go through what we think makes it unique, but more than that, we're considering doing this for multiple materials, like what is paint and exploring that. What is ink, working with wood, and not just talking about that, but maybe even actually doing that together, like gathering clay from the earth and processing it and actually making things out of it and talking about that on the show. Making it more multimedia too, probably with video and photographs. And, if you just want to listen, you can hear us doing that. We'll edit it together on the show, but that's sort of where we came to this morning. I don't know. Do you have anything more?
Yeah.
On that? Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to add that. So kind of to put a what's a good saying or metaphor, like put a stamp on it. That's not the saying. What do you say? To put a bow on it? To put a bow on it, maybe.
You put a pin on it if you want to talk about it later.
Put a pin in. No, I don't want a pin in it.
You want to wrap it up.
Sealed.
You want to wrap it up.
Is that's a bow? To put a stamp on it.
You want to stamp it?
Cart before the horse. I'm out of. Yeah. So I think maybe. That's not right. Mom always said blacker than the inside of a cow. I'm not totally sure.
I think that's just about color and tone.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. So I think to put a bow on it, it would be that in approaching craft, which ceramics is one of them, we're not trying to work with just a category of thing like fibers or ceramics or whatever or charcoal, but rather we're thinking, all right, what about these materials is unique in each type of material? And to better understand the qualities of that material as we work with them, let's not just talk about like the technical approach to drawing with charcoal or whatever, or to make a bowl, or the critique of it. Let's actually get our hands dirty. Let's work with the material, and we're kind of like get to know thinking through the material and see what we make through that process. And along the way, we're gonna hopefully explore the technical process of how to create and work with these materials, but also maybe figure out what sorts of work comes out of the unique qualities of each one of them. So, first up is ceramics. So let's do the love letter to ceramics. What is unique about ceramics? Why is it enduring? What comes to mind for you, Jeff? From the simplest thing to the most nuanced technical knowledge, what do you like about ceramics?
I think, when we sort of modified and through this prompted each other this morning, the first point that I wrote down was that ceramics is universal. It's universal around the world, and it's universal throughout human history. It is found in, I would wager, every culture throughout time, and it's still in your cupboard today. That this material was fashioned by some of the earliest human groups, and yet anybody listening to this right now could go to their cupboard, and I would wager good money that there is ceramics in there, that this material has somehow been with us from the beginning. It's like it's right there with fire and dogs and all that really primitive.
You really got a thing for fire and dogs.
I got a thing for fire. Okay. Frazetta's got his iguanas, and I've got fire and dogs. Okay.
It's really interesting that like in almost every cupboard in the world, there is some sort of ceramic object.
There's fire,
and also within a mile or two of that same cupboard, you could dig, assuming it's the right location, and you could find clay to be processed. It's something that everybody can do and everyone has. And I think that's just super, like, just to pause there for a second before we list some of the other things.
Oh, it blows
that's a really
my mind.
incredible thing. I mentioned earlier that like what other technology does that? Like it's not like every cupboard has a flinted object, like a stone
like
that has a flinted edge. Like, there's not. I gotta chop this meat. Let me go get my rough hewn hand axe. That's not a thing. But ceramics is still there, and so like it's interesting that it is the most basic, simple thing. Yet it has like I actually in my neighborhood where houses were being built. I was telling you earlier that like. They're churning up this soil and kind of leveling stuff off. and I would see these large clumps of soil that were like maybe 2 feet, 1 foot in diameter. And if you ran a wire through them, cut them in half, it's just bands of ball clay is all it is inside there. And so I've actually dried it out and processed it. And it's like I had mugs in my house made from the clay in my own backyard. And I just think that's interesting that like, and I didn't really do anything special. I mean, I took it to school to get it fired, but other than that, it was just processing with some buckets in my backyard.
Yeah. Like that, I maybe I'm weird. That blows my mind. I mean, that was like my second point, was that there's the universality, like in culture and in time, in history, right? Like this is the material that the first written words were put on. But then this is a material that, like you said, you can dig out of your backyard, and pretty much with just that material and burning wood, you can build up the whole process. Like you can make an oven to make the bricks for a kiln, you can work your way up. You can repeat that whole process. At the same time, at its basic properties, this is the same material that fucking brought human beings safely back from space. Like
right.
It spans
except for that one group, but other than that, most people.
R.I.P. When it fails spectacularly, like all over Texas. But that like it really does span the whole of human history. It's not just like, oh yeah, the Etruscans had cups and I have a cup. Like I get that point is a little obvious maybe. But
that
it goes.
My whole point. I'm scratching out right now.
you're scratching out the Etruscan.
I'm just crossing out Etruscans. All right, it's totally obvious.
All right, fine. Shouldn't have let him go first. Right. But it's that the material keeps getting reworked. Like we keep those basic things with us, right? The basic idea of the vessel, which is that could be a whole episode in and of itself. But that it's not just about this container, but then we rework the material and we think through the material to like it has a place in the space age, right? That's I don't know that
right. And I wonder how much of that is like, this is just as a tangent here, but I wonder how much of like utilizing things like that on spaceships or space stations has to do with the heat, refractive qualities of ceramics. Certainly it does.
Yeah, it's thinking through the material.
But how much of it also is like, these are materials that we're familiar with, and so we kind of are we can't think in terms of anything other than like it's almost always responding to ceramics and things like that, or to these basic materials, like why is it that we put wood bowls on a lathe and carve them to look like a perfectly symmetrical bowl? Is that a response to the clay and the way we expect to move through clay? And maybe that's not the best example, but like, to what degree does it inform the way we view objects around us? And I've heard the argument that even ceramics, like the desire to make like bowls and stuff, probably came from finding like a coconut half split open, and we see this form and realize, oh, that holds water. What if I could do this with that?
Yeah.
And so it's like responding
it's like a small
to nature.
Lake or pond, and then you see
you can't help but see convex rocks around you.
Well, and it's also the shape of two cupped hands, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's not the greatest example because it is a thing that has a very high utility. And so maybe it's inevitable that you would have that anyway, but it's a little bit of that am I the puddle or am I formed to the shape of the ground kind of thing. So
whoa,
what's that? What's that Douglas Adams thing where he said where the puddle was sentient and musing, like is it amazing that this hole in the ground was formed to fit me just perfectly, rather than viewing it as the puddle forms to fit the hole?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, hey man, there's a reason that a banana has 5 sides. Okay, just look at your hand. All right.
It's made to go in your mouth. That banana is like, it's perfect. It perfectly fits, lays across the arc of your tongue. You tell me that's a coincidence? Come on.
Intelligent design.
My mouth was made for that banana. It's like my mouth is a banana pocket.
I thought we had already landed on episode title, man.
You
Why
can't
don't?
pass up my mouth as a banana pocket. That's okay. So what's your number 2, 3? What's your next number?
Well, do you want to throw one out? Because I already shot one that was on walking the line between craft art and industry. I had mentioned that kind of early on.
Yeah, I mean, I had some of that. I had I don't know. Some of the things we could talk about might be. I mean, this is kind of a brainstorming session here a little bit, and so it's kind of we could talk about the history of it, which I guess we're kind of touching on there. But I'd want to go into more detail. I thought that it would be fun, maybe to, and this gets the idea that the ubiquity of the clay, that it would be fun to go to Goodwill and find our best examples of handmade ceramics. Like those, what other art form do you find in surplus at Goodwill other than handmade vessels that someone lovingly created for another person? And they just find their way to Goodwill. Like honestly, if anyone listening wants good handmade ceramics, I'm not saying everything at Goodwill that's handmade is good, but if you look through their mugs, I guarantee you there are some quality thrown mugs. I find them every time I go, like hand turned foot, perfectly pulled and tapered handle. Someone gave it to another person, and that human being was like, "Nah, I'm going to give that away for free."
Well, supposedly somebody died, and that's why it's at Goodwill. But
oh, that's the positive spin. Someone died, and now
I'm always looking at the silver lining to that coffin.
No, a few times I've looked up the name on the back of vases and things like that at Goodwill. And it's a living, practicing artist with a successful ceramics practice in the local area. Meaning somebody bought this from a professional potter and gave it as a gift. This is not just like someone's first term project. This is like something of value, and it's just interesting that maybe that takes us as a transition from the ubiquity of ceramics in the household. And that might play a role, but also that this is not just a utilitarian object. This is a thing that has aesthetic value, and someone may get it. It may be a perfectly functional object, even has some preciousness of material, but it doesn't match my aesthetic, which is an interesting thing. I never, I don't get a pair of pliers as a gift from Dad and think, that's not quite my shop aesthetic. I think I'm going to give those away. That makes the yellow doesn't match the color of the shop, you know. But we do that with bowls.
You have said that. I mean, you dumped the entire socket set into the trash in front of me because I had picked the wrong shade of red, and I apologize.
That's different. That's because I like to cause you pain.
Yeah, that's true. That's exactly. It has a gift receipt. I'll return it. You don't have to do it. And what's weird is that you just like you never like the eye contact just maintained the whole time, and the sockets, they didn't really fall into the can. Like half of them were just spilling on the floor. It was making a hell of a racket. You were really committed to it, man.
Just slowly clunk clunk.
Yeah, slowly clunk clunk clunk.
Yeah, so let's talk about the aesthetics of ceramics a little bit. I mean, I feel like that's a big player in the room, and that's really what causes ceramics to start jumping categories, I would say, to move from function to design and fine art. Wouldn't you?
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, it probably has something to do with like the plasticity of it, that it is such a totally plastic medium until it's fired, until you make a chemical change to it. And I think because of that, I guess I'm just really centering little ceramics pun on that's all right. I'll cut it out. I'll cut it out.
It's too late.
Yeah. Thanks, Dan. Thanks. But I guess that's why I'm centering on this idea that art is really about presenting a sign or a symbol first, and then finding a medium to match that sign, a medium or material second. And craft is thinking through the medium or material first, that leads to intentionally or unintentionally a sign or a symbol in culture, right? So
yeah, I guess acknowledging that each material has its own qualities. And it's not to say that you have to fall within those limitations, but at least be aware of those qualities. And ceramics really is unique, and this is probably why it has endured. The endured. I was trying to think of some poetic way to say time. I'll just say time. It's endured through time.
Brilliant.
As a useful, I miss my calling as a writer. It's because ceramics, like, you can't help but say something with it. In its clay form, it'll take something as fine as a fingerprint and reproduce it. You literally can't touch it without saying something one way or another. And so, like, when I teach kids, ceramics is like, it's amazing that it is the most user friendly. It's this really odd material, super user friendly, because anyone can manipulate it. Like with a piece of wood, you have to know how to read the grain. You have to know how to use certain tools.
I'm literally just scratching off points that I had made. Like, well, he's fucking jump into that. Okay, thanks.
You have to know all these things to be able to actually manipulate it and say anything with the wood. But with ceramics, you can do it just simply by touching it. But at the same time, it's really fickle. You can overplay something. It's just a very receptive medium. And then through a little bit of effort, we can make something that's permanent. And so it just kind of occupies so many of those roles. But in terms of aesthetics, the fact that it's so plastic, so malleable, means that that it's going to be subject to a very nuanced read in almost all of its uses. You know, like sometimes just doing a delicate little pinch movement around the rim rather than spinning it clean on the wheel says something very particular about the way you did that. You know, it says something, it makes it personalized immediately. And so, like, little nuances that generally a rim that's symmetrical, you know, what's the difference if it has these little dimples? But having those pinch marks around the rim, makes it. I can hear the microphone squeaking. Like, you're
Oh man.
Doesn't really change the utility of it, but it makes it seem more personalized when you pinch the rim.
I just need about 30 seconds on that. I don't. Yeah.
All right, yeah. So anyway, pinching the rim has a real nice aesthetic.
Yeah, a real episode title. I think that was like my let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Fifth point was that to my mind, more than any other material that you could work with, it is done directly with the hand with no tooling, support, ground required. I mean, you can knit with just your fingers, I guess that's true, but to even make the fiber to knit with, you know, like there is some sort of tooling that has to be made. I don't know. I'm sure if we're getting that wrong, please email or let us know. But I think you need some tooling to at least get thread or yarn made. I think clay, like, you could literally scoop it out of the ground and make a thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So, so speaking of scooping clay out of the ground, we're gonna obviously we're just hitting kind of surface level ideas around craft, around making aesthetics.
Like as a show, not just this episode, but like as a show.
Our show is just surface level. If you're not, if you haven't gotten that so far, it's but in order to try to investigate some of this a little bit more, we have a plan. We have devised a plan.
Oh God.
Right? Haven't we? We were going to call it the brothers.
I have a note in here that
forging fun. Mud forging fun. Is that
even? So just real quick,
we wanted like a nice OPB like segue thing. We wanted like a nice adventure
fun
thing.
Is your OPB?
I'm just saying, like, if we had like the text slide, we're gonna take a camera, we're gonna go out, we're gonna like dig some clay, we're gonna process it, and we're gonna figure this out together. And I'm just picturing like a nice our nice text sliding across the screen, the big clay dig or something.
Yeah,
you know,
big clay dig is more child friendly. Mud forging fun 2K18 is Mudforge 2K18 makes it sound like we're doing some sort of adventure race or something like that.
Oh yeah, like one of those things where you run while carrying a
Like you pay to be
a
miserable,
ham hock or
basically.
whatever it is people do. Like so they do weird things.
You run with a ham hock?
I thought they carry something like weird. Like they're always like trying to come up with something that's really asymmetrical and not something you normally
Run
carry.
5 miles with a pineapple in your ass.
Exactly. Stem first. Don't...
Well, yeah, I mean, we're here to get hard.
All right.
It's easier if you pinch the rim.
Well, it shows that you care. You know, if you pinch the rim before carrying a pineapple in your ass, it does show like a certain consideration. You know what I mean? It's just rude otherwise. Yeah.
Just a playful pinch.
So speaking of a playful pinch, when we do the Brothers Outdoor Adventure Time, we're going to...
You keep changing the title of the...
I'm going to take his silence as a yes.
Silence is consent.
Mud forging fun. Mud forging fun sound. It sounds like are we making stuff by forging, or are we crossing? Are we like forging, like when you forge a river? Is that the right?
You ford a river. For the love of God, you know this.
You don't forge a river. That's not. We were stuck for 3 days trying to forge the Willamette. Well, you're doing it wrong. That's what you're doing. Yeah, so we're gonna go. Many people don't know this. You can go on usgs.gov and you can look up different minerals, different earth-based things. And you can find their locality around you. You can get permission, and you can go out there and you can dig them up. Anything from gold, that's a pretty popular one. I'll just let you know right now.
Oh, I wonder why.
To ball clay. So we're actually going to find some locations where we can get some clay, and we're going to go out together. We're going to videotape it. We're going to dig some clay. Maybe bring the kiddos along, and we're going to process this clay, make materials out of it, and we're going to do this as part of a larger series for the podcast and some videos on YouTube.
And we have done this before. We're not like total ingenues. Like we've done this at least one time before
for sure. So yeah, we've done this before. I've done it with clay around my backyard. And we did it for an advanced ceramics class one time. So we're going to do this with clay. We're going to do this with charcoal. We're going to make our own charcoal, test some different wood, see what the best material is. We were going to grind some pigment, maybe even go out and find some foliage in our local region and dry it out, grind some pigment, make some paintings. So we're going to, as part of the Brothers Craft Time Sharing Hour, we have these different shows that we do. Sometimes they're critique, sometimes they're questions from the internet, sometimes it's how to do a thing. This is kind of the how to do thing, but we're getting real hands-on. We're getting real handsy with these mediums, and we're gonna go have a good time on the big clay dig.
The Brothers Mud Forge 2K18.
Yeah.
Should we just change the title every time? Should we? We need to come up with like
every time, but it needs to be official.
If you have a recommendation for the title, just send it our way because we're no good at that. Clearly, our podcast doesn't even have podcast in the title, which I think is probably part of the headwind that we're facing.
Are we supposed to do that?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
And then on Instagram, we say like the Brothers Craft Time Sharing Instagram. Like if you have it in the title, that helps. I really don't know how to social. I don't know. I don't know how to do things.
Like both online or in person. Yeah.
It's true. That whole eye contact thing freaks me out. Apparently it shows submission to look down and away, so I do it all the time.
Right. Well, it's not only that, but it's when you urinate all over the belly. Like
when I piddle, you splash it on my white tum-tum.
Yeah. Also, if you have a medium that we should explore, or you have expertise in this way or anything like that, like reach out to us because we've got the obvious ones on our hit list, right? Some of them we have more experience with than others, but maybe we've wanted to tackle it for a while. Even as something as simple as like checking or drying wood. I know, I've tried that before with mixed results.
Yeah, we did that together. This is the interesting thing is like this was a question or a request that was a prompt from a listener, possibly a host, that we investigate ceramics. And through like looking at it, you and I started realizing, hey, we've actually done this before already.
Yeah, we've done a lot of this. Yeah,
it was in undergrad that you asked me to go into the woods with you and help you cut down some alder.
With permission. With permission. We didn't just like walk into the woods and fall at trees.
Just our neighbor's land.
Yeah, but that was crazy. Well, I needed you because you had 4-wheel drive.
So did not.
And I think
okay.
Well, we took your vehicle, didn't we?
We did. I didn't have 4-wheel drive. I lied to you about that part because I wanted to be included.
Shit. Yeah. And we
But you called BLM. They told us I think they said something like just take it all. We don't want that.
Oh yeah, it turns out that was trash wood. Well, okay, so how this started was we were on a trip. I think you and I were actually on this trip together, and in a small gallery like in the San Juan Islands or something like that, saw this really beautiful wood carving. It was like most of the branch was left intact, and then the end of the branch was carved into an eagle head, and it was really lovely. It was folk and kitsch, but done at a level of refinement and workmanship that was like fantastic, and the color of the wood was just really appealing. And so I made sure to look at the material. I certainly couldn't afford the piece, but like, like,
so I'll just take the idea
like a good thief,
myself.
You want to check the material. So I checked the material. I saw what species of wood it was, and then I was like, oh shit, I could cut that down myself. The end of the story is that I couldn't do it, but that's fine. I mean, these are the mistakes of youth, right? But it ended.
Were 27.
But then we called. Yeah, I called BLM and was like, hey, where I totally did what you were saying with finding minerals, except there's a website where you can find, I think, what species of tree or where. And I ended up calling BLM and like, hey, I want to get this tree. And they totally, like you were saying, they totally were like, that's a trash tree and we hate having it around. So yeah, go ahead. Like you could, but they said like, hey, here's where an active cut is happening. So you're not going to disrupt too much. Go in these, they gave me sort of a fence of geo coordinates, and we went up there with hand saws, and gosh, man, if anything happened to us, that would have sucked. I had to get back, I think, in time for class or something like that. It was good time.
Yeah, and you showed me how to seal the end so it didn't check, and I left it in my shop for a long time. It's probably still in there under a bench or something.
Oh, it takes checking. It turns out that this wood has just been dumped on and rained on. So they said don't cut down live trees, just cut down trees that have naturally fallen, or snags or something like that. So we do that. But this wood has it's been rained on. I think we cut it in the fall or spring, like really rainy time, and oh god, like it was just so it's so wet, and it takes forever for this stuff to dry. Forever. Like normally you do it in like a specialized sort of drying room or oven,
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah, and you also did this with driftwood. That actually turned out a little bit easier because then you actually just had to dry it out because it had already done all of the checking it was going to do. It's almost like the water kind of pickled it, Like
it's amazing. Yeah.
It stayed there. Yeah.
Driftwood has actually been the most successful for me.
Yeah.
There is a chance that it's rotted, but I think you and I both have had the most success with driftwood. But anyway, this is supposed to be about ceramics.
And drifters. So,
well, that's for our other podcast.
Yeah, so we realized we've actually done this a few times, and we are looking forward to kicking off this new segment, The Big Dig. So
The Brothers Mud Hunt.
The Brothers Mud. I like it. Okay, so look forward to this series coming to a YouTube near you.
The
what
Brothers
are the links,
Hot
Jeff,
Mud Challenge.
Hot Mud Challenge. I like it. Hot Mud Challenge. Awesome. I'm game.
You said that a little too quickly.
I'm just looking forward to like calling the National Geological Service and asking, like, my brother and I are looking for a place to go dig a mud hole in the woods. Hello? Hello? Just click. Dang. Again. Ding, ding,
No,
ding,
it's
ding,
it's
ding,
totally
ding.
cool because we're bringing kids with us. Hello?
Still
Uh,
nothing. Still
yeah.
nothing.
Should we do?
All right.
Do you think we should do a follow up where we get a little more in depth on Howard Rosati's book? Because we mentioned it at the top. It is it's definitely theory and it's definitely for a certain audience. But I wonder if we could maybe take a future episode.
We
to
should
relate
totally
that.
fit it to something. We should make the goal of like breaking down the book, but then we'll also we'll choose a we'll call it like through the lens of Howard Rosati, and we'll choose something to break down using his extremely rigid categories.
It is, yeah.
Just random objects that we have to break down.
Yeah,
using these
like
categories.
turgid categories for sure.
That necklace is too big. No longer jewelry. It's now a container for the human being. It's over.
It's a neck container. So
it's a neck container. Yeah,
jewelry
exactly.
it's its own thing. If you make the jewelry too large, it becomes a neck container. Now it's craft. So
yeah,
and
doesn't he go through the categories and then when he gets to jewelry, it's like, and I recognize jewelry is a bit of a problem for this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Anyway, if there is a medium, like I mentioned before, if there's a medium or material that you would really like us to tackle, like if you would like to see us suffer third-degree burns trying to make ink, for instance, like, go ahead. The anecdotes I've heard about making ink are that it can be highly, highly dangerous if you do it the old school way. Preferably nothing with lead, like let's make our own flake white, or like.
No, I'd like to keep living.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, I guess with all my faculties, but I think we could totally do like pigment using like local foliage and stuff like that. I mean, we're gonna be restricted on the colors,
yeah.
But I have a dehydrator. We'll grind it up. We'll extract it.
Should we try and make like violet or indigo? Well, I'm thinking of like the Roman violet. I forget what it's called, like Tyrannus or something like that. That is made from
is that
from shellfish?
Go ahead.
From shellfish, and you have to like cut open this particular cyst or gland in the shellfish, like or sea snails.
Jeez.
And you have to cut open like 10 to 12,000 of them to get a gram.
Yeah, no, I'm okay.
No?
Okay. Without, I was just thinking like various shades of green. Was all I was gonna do.
Just mashing up leaves. Okay, yeah.
Well, and what's that beetle? Have you ever actually held a bag of that beetle they use to make a certain kind of red? It's like a sienna or something like that, some kind of red, and they crush it up. And I held them once. It's just a whole bag of these beetles.
Whoa!
You have to grind up. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Oh man, a lot of mortar and pestle action coming our way, I feel like. But yeah.
Sounded like a threat.
It did.
Okay. So, do we need to cover the links, or do you think people have got it? Just throw Sharing Hour into Google, and you'll find it.
You'll find it.
You know it's in there.
Yeah, if you want to check out our work or whatever, hop on Instagram. That's I think our most active account. Handle is Sharing Hour. If you want to shout at us, you can do it through a direct message on Instagram, or if you prefer Twitter, handle is Sharing Hour. If you want to send a little private message, something away from prying eyes, sharinghour@gmail.com. Remember, reviews, 5-star written reviews is how you help a show like this grow.
See, it wasn't me who made the suggestion for ceramics objects, because that would mean that I know our Instagram handle, which I clearly don't.
Yeah. Also, if you want any show notes, past episodes, there's some images up there, videos, links to artists that are cool. Everything that we've talked about so far, 20 plus episodes, that's at sharinghour.com. Some cool stuff there. And as I mentioned before, our bookshelf is now on Goodreads. So I think, that's all I'm comfortable talking about for now. So, Dan, are you ready for a big hot mud hunt?
I am super ready for the big
primed.
I got my pineapple. I'm ready to go. Let's do this.
All right. I'll do you a solid and pinch the rim.